Disclaimer.
I collapsed and met the child I never held.
My name is Evelyn Mae Robinson, 67, from Jackson, Mississippi. I died for 14 minutes on March 9th, 2018.
And someone I lost was waiting for me. There are parts of my life I never learned how to say out loud. Even at 67, some memories still tighten my throat the way they did when I was young, especially the ones tied to my marriage. People looked at us and thought we were steady, loyal, seasoned by time. But time does not always heal. Sometimes it simply teaches you how to hide your wounds in plain sight. I remember waking up most mornings beside my husband, Samuel, feeling the warmth of his body, but not the closeness I used to know. He would breathe slow and heavy, the way older men do, and I would stare at the ceiling, wondering how home could be so full and so empty at the same time. We had spent 48 years under the same roof, yet there were days I felt like a quiet ghost drifting around him. We did not fight. Not much anyway. Our danger was silence. The kind of silence that grows roots, the kind of silence that becomes a habit. I cooked breakfast, he read the newspaper. I washed the dishes, he watched his shows. We spoke, of course, but never about the one thing that built a wall between us. The child we lost. The baby who slipped away before we ever heard a first cry. I carried that grief like a stone the size of my own heart. And I buried it deep, too deep. Sometimes I would see him sitting in his old brown recliner, blinking slowly, his face tired from years and regrets he never shared, and something inside me would ache. Because I wanted him to ask how I was doing. Not about the morning, not about my medication, but about my soul. About the wound inside me that never stopped bleeding. But he never did. And I never asked him why. One evening, I remember washing dishes while he dried them. The faucet hissed, the TV murmured down the hall, and neither of us spoke. The tension between us felt heavier than the years stacked on our backs. I could feel my own heartbeat quickening, that familiar tightness forming in my chest. He stood right beside me, close enough for me to touch, but far enough to feel unreachable. When he passed the towel across the plate I handed him, our fingers brushed. A small thing, a tiny, accidental touch. But I pulled my hand back as if the plate was hot. He noticed. He always noticed, even when he pretended not to. He looked at me with that quiet guilt he never learned to confess. I felt it more than I understood it. There was a shadow in his eyes that had been there ever since the miscarriage, one he carried but never named. And sometimes I wondered if he blamed himself, but I never asked. So we just stood there, two grown people, two tired hearts, two survivors of the same storm, separated by hurt neither of us knew how to speak about. That night I lay in bed with my back to him, staring into the dark. My breath trembled. My eyes burned. I could hear him shifting, trying to get comfortable, trying to get close, then giving up. His sigh was soft, but it cut me. I whispered into the darkness. "You should have held me longer, you should have asked." But he was already asleep. Or maybe he was just pretending not to hear. The pain of that night followed me into the next morning. I felt it in the air when I walked into the kitchen. I felt it in the way my fingers trembled when I tried to pour my tea. And I felt it most in the hollow part of my chest, the place where I once imagined a little heartbeat. And without warning, the memory swept over me. The hospital room. The white sheets. The cold silence when the doctor shook his head. My breath broke. Just remembering it made me grip the edge of the counter for balance. My legs weakened. My heart fluttered strangely, like a bird panicking inside my ribcage. Then I glanced at the calendar on the wall. And realized what day it was. The due date. The date our child was supposed to enter the world. Every year it haunted me. But this time, the ache felt different. Sharper. Deeper. More dangerous. I waited to see if Samuel would say something. Anything. Even just my name in a way that felt like comfort. But when he walked in, he only nodded at me, picked up his medication bottle, and sat at the table. He did not notice my trembling hands. He did not see the panic rising in my throat. He did not feel the weight of the date stabbing through me like a blade. He simply took a sip of water and said, "You forget to warm the kettle?" Such a small sentence. Such a tiny, ordinary moment. but it shattered something fragile inside me. My breath caught. My chest tightened. And for the first time in decades, I let myself break. My voice came out barely above a whisper. "You forgot what today is." He froze. His eyes lifted slowly. Confused. Lost. Unprepared. Before he could speak, the room spun slightly to the left, then right. My fingers slipped off the counter. My vision blurred. There was a ringing in my ears, long and piercing, drowning out everything else. I tried to take a breath, but it came shallow. Thin. Weak. The floor beneath my feet felt soft, as if turning into clouds. My limbs went cold. My heart stumbled in my chest. I remember trying to say his name, but my lips barely moved. All that came out was a faint, broken whisper. "Sam." And then the world tilted. The cup slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. The sound echoed inside my skull like thunder underwater. My knees gave out. My vision dimmed at the edges, darkening like a curtain being pulled across my eyes. I tried to steady myself, reaching for anything. The table, the chair, the air. But my fingers closed around nothing. My last conscious thought came through like a flicker of lightning. We never talked about the child. We never healed. My heartbeat faded into a soft, distant thudding, then into silence. And, in that final fading breath, I felt something reach for me from beyond. He caught me before I hit the floor. Samuel's hands were suddenly there, strong, steady, shaking all the same. He bent over me like a man who had been called back to a single, urgent duty he had been avoiding for years. His face was a storm of fear and something like shame. He murmured my name, over and over, like a prayer he had not practiced. "Hold on, Evie, hold on," he said, and his voice was thin, breaking on the edges. I tried to answer him. Words wanted to come, heavy as stones, but they would not leave my mouth. My breath was shallow, like the sound of a small animal hiding in a barn. The kitchen lights blurred into halos. The old clock on the wall kept time with a metronome I could not hear. Everything narrowed down to the space between his hands and my ribs. He slapped the kitchen phone with trembling fingers and bellowed for help. I could hear urgency now, the kind that takes no account of history, no patient memory of past silences. Neighbors were shouting. Someone was running. The house smelled like coffee and copper and old wood, and all the years we had spent pretending everything was fine. Then Samuel was on the floor beside me, palms pressing hard into my chest, pushing like a stranger trying to bring a drowned thing back to the surface. His breath came in rasps. He called my name louder. He tore off his shirt as if the fabric could pull me back to him. I remember tasting metal. I remember the shock of light in the doorway when the first paramedic ducked into the kitchen. Voices were everywhere, sharp, efficient, clipped. They spoke in directions, numbers, short commands. One of them was kneeling, the other at the foot of the stairs calling out for the ambulance. Someone held a phone to my ear with a voice asking me to squeeze their hand. I tried. My fingers were soft and slow. A strap across my leg felt like a cold ribbon. They moved me with the practiced tenderness of people who had chosen to meet fear every day and still kept their calm. There was a darkness at the corners of my vision that felt like velvet being pulled over a lamp. It did not frighten me as much as it surprised me, how easy the slipping could feel once the body chose to let go. In the ambulance, the siren blared like a distant trumpet. The road became a smear of light and dark. Samuel sat in the front, his hands clenched so tight the knuckles were white. He whispered fragments of sentences I could not hold, apologies, memories, the names of things we had never spoken about, my name for the child, the little nickname he had always used when he thought I was not listening. I wanted to tell him to stop apologizing. I wanted to tell him that I had been angry for so long because I wanted to be seen. Because my loneliness had been heavy and loud and I thought he did not care. I wanted to tell him that I had blamed him in my quiet hours. But the words would not gather into sentences. They were like a flock of birds scattering, refusing to land. At the hospital, the lights were surgical and bright. People moved around me as if through water. An oxygen mask hovered near my mouth like a foreign moon. A nurse placed her hand on my forehead, and it felt like an offering. Machines began to speak in beeps and buzzes, steady, clinical, indifferent to the story that lay inside me. They measured me with numbers and graphs that did not know the language of grief. Somewhere, a doctor said my heart had stalled. There were palms pressed to my chest again, and then the world contracted into one burning white sensation, and then expanded into a silence so loud I felt it in my jaw. Time stopped being a line. It became a patchwork of flash frames. The smile Samuel wore when we first married, the hush of the hospital room where the doctor had given us the news years ago, the soft rustle of the blankets where I had once imagined a small body sleeping. Each memory came like a photograph smudged at the edges, vivid and ragged and unbearably close. My breaths were thin threads. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and lilies. I felt my body growing small inside itself, as if I were folding up like a letter no longer needed. Panic rose, and then, oddly, a kind of surrender. I was tired in a way I had not named. I was tired of holding the hurt like a secret talisman, as if keeping it close would keep me safe from the shame of wanting to speak. Someone shouted, "Clear." A cold metal kiss. My chest tightened. For a second the world recoiled and then rushed back like a tide. I felt hands again, many hands, and the warmth of them was a hard, glittering thing. I wanted to open my eyes. I wanted to see Samuel's face. I wanted to tell him that I was sorry for everything I had not said. I wanted to forgive him and be forgiven. But my body lay still in neutral space, as if waiting for an instruction I could not hear. Then something shifted, not with the violence of the shocks, but with the quiet pressure of a tide turning. The noise smoothed out. The beeps thinned. The air around me seemed to warm, like a stove that you put your hands near on a winter day. The pain that had been a constant companion in my chest loosened its grip. It was not gone, not yet, but it began to slacken like a rope finally given and not to hold. My limbs felt lighter. My lungs that had been tight and shallow drew in the room like a stranger inhaling a perfume they had forgotten. Then, very softly, I felt a hand I did not recognize slip into mine. It was small and cool and somehow familiar in a way my life had not prepared me for. It fit inside my fingers the way a key fits a lock my whole life had been turning toward without knowing. A voice, not loud and not commanding, spoke directly into the hollow of my chest. The sound was like rain on an old tin roof, steady, comforting, and inevitable. "Do not be afraid," it said. My first instinct was to search the room, to find the mouth that had made that gentle sound. But there were no mouths. There were only memories folding and unfolding around me, and the warmth that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I felt myself lift. It was not the violent lifting of a machine. It was the soft, unhurried rising of a leaf loosening from its branch. The hospital lights stretched and elongated. The machines became a distant song. Samuel's face hovered like a painting, blurred with tears, and the hard vertical lines of grief. As I rose, the images of my life unspooled like thread through a needle, the laughter of young years, the cramped apartment where we had first held hands, the tiny white dress I had once bought thinking it might be for a daughter, the hollow, sterile room where the doctor had spoken in measured tones. There was a corridor unfolding ahead of me, a long, strange hallway made of moments. On the walls were scenes from my marriage, painted in living color. My hands were shown small and angry in one frame, soft and forgiving in another. I watched 100 little mistakes and mercies play back, each one a stitch in the fabric of a life that had always looked ordinary from the outside. Somewhere in that hallway I heard music, soft piano notes like an old hymn half remembered. There was a gentle wind that smelled of river water and cut grass, and the scent my mother used to wear. And there, suspended in the air before me, something caught the light in a way nothing on earth ever had. A ring, but not the ring I had worn every day. This ring glowed from within, a small sun of promise. It hovered like a secret waiting to be told. Threads, thin, golden threads, lustered and fragile, stitched through the air like music tied into bows. They trembled in a breeze I did not feel with my skin but with my soul. Beyond that, I thought I saw flowers, withered ones. Petals browned at the edges, but they gave off a soft, sad beauty as if even death had left them something to offer. And under the soft glow an infant stood, not crying but watching me with eyes older than time. The child held a light between tiny palms, and the light pulsed in a rhythm that matched the slow, returning beat in my chest. Everything became quiet and enormous. At that moment, I understood this was not an ending. Everything became clear in the fold of that corridor and the way the ring turned in the light. I finally saw the truth, how much had been left unsaid, how much both of us had carried alone. And then the light brightened, as if the whole hallway had inhaled. My name, my whole name, was spoken again, but this time it was wrapped inside the voice that said it with an intimacy that made my knees weak. Evie, the voice said, simple and endless. I could not hold on to the room or the beeping machines anymore. I felt the current pulling, gentle but unstoppable, and for the first time in a very long time I did not resist. The light carried me gently, as if I were suspended inside warmth itself, drifting without weight, without fear. The hospital sounds faded until they vanished completely, and I found myself surrounded by a soft glow that felt alive. It was not like the sun or lamps or anything earthly. It had a tenderness to it, a warmth that reached inside me rather than around me. I felt myself turning, slowly, as though someone had placed invisible hands on my shoulders and guided me forward. Ahead of me, hanging in the air with a quiet brilliance, was my wedding ring, but it did not look the way it had on my hand for 48 years. It glowed from within, pulsing gently like a heartbeat made of gold. It moved as I moved. It waited as I hesitated. It seemed to breathe with me. A warm breeze brushed across my face, even though there was no wind I could see. It carried a scent I remembered from my youth, magnolia blossoms and river mist. The kind of scent that comes before sunrise in the deep south. The ring drifted ahead, and I followed it. As I walked, if you could call that walking, the space around me transformed. The soft glow stretched into a long corridor, but not one made of walls or floors. It was made of memory. Every surface shimmered like polished glass, and inside that glass, scenes played. Scenes from my life. I stopped in front of the first one. There I was, 20 years old, laughing on my wedding day, clutching Samuel's trembling hand. He had been so nervous he could barely say his vows. I saw it now with new eyes, the tenderness on his face, the hope shining inside him, the way he looked at me like I was made of something precious. I reached toward the memory. My fingers passed through the image, but I felt the emotion inside it, warmth, promise, innocence. The corridor shifted, pulling me forward. Another scene formed. I saw myself sitting on the bathroom floor, the day I found out I was pregnant. Samuel was outside the door, leaning his forehead against the wood, whispering prayers he thought I could not hear. He had been so happy, so afraid, so human. The scene changed again. I watched us in that small, cold hospital room. I was lying in the bed, staring at the ceiling, numb. Samuel stood in the corner with his hand over his mouth, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. He had faced the wall so I would not see him cry. And suddenly something inside me broke open, because in life, I never saw him cry that day. I had believed he stood there emotionless, disengaged, distant. But here, in this realm, there was no hiding. The truth was laid bare. He had cried for our child. He had cried for me. He had cried because he did not know how to lift the weight that fell on us both. I stepped closer as the memory of him bent over, clutching the edge of the windowsill, shaking like he was being torn apart. And I felt a pain so sharp it felt like a second death, because I had spent decades believing he did not care. The corridor pulled me to the next moment. I saw myself in the kitchen a year later, washing dishes with my jaw tight, refusing to speak. I watched the bitterness in my own shoulders, the way I would avoid his eyes. I watched him try soft touches, small questions, quiet offerings. I watched myself turn away from all of them. I felt the weight of regret crush into me like a winter storm. The corridor moved again. There I was at 50, at 60, sitting on the edge of our bed looking at him while he slept, my face a mix of longing and anger. And there he was reaching for me in his sleep, hand outstretched, searching for a closeness we had both forgotten how to give. As these scenes drifted past, something happened overhead. Thin golden threads appeared, soft, glowing filaments connecting each memory to the floating ring ahead of me. They pulsed in gentle rhythms, like veins carrying truth instead of blood. With every step I took, the threads shimmered brighter. With every memory I faced, the ring's glow deepened. At that moment, I understood something simple and devastating. I had been grieving alone. He had been grieving alone. We had been side by side, but separated by unsaid sorrow. The corridor opened suddenly at the end, widening into a space filled with a soft golden haze. The light bent around me like a gentle bow, welcoming me into something deeper, something sacred, something that felt like truth waiting in the shape of silence. And ahead of me, through the glow, I saw the outline of a garden. A garden full of flowers that were bowed and withered, yet still breathing with a faint, stubborn beauty. As I stepped toward it, the warm breeze lifted again, carrying a tenderness that wrapped around me like a mother's embrace. And I felt, deep in my spirit, that I was being led somewhere I had never imagined I would see. Somewhere where the truth had been waiting for decades, untouched. The garden breathed as I stepped into it, not with wind, but with memory. The petals of the withered flowers trembled gently, as though they recognized me somehow. Their colors were muted, soft browns, faded pinks, dusty blues, yet a strange, delicate light pulsed from their centers. I moved slowly through the path, each step making the air ripple like warm water. The flowers leaned toward me, bowing as if greeting an old friend. When I reached out to touch one, its petals brushed against my fingers with a fragile warmth, like the last sigh of a fading ember. The moment my skin met the withered bloom, a memory exploded around me. Samuel sitting alone at the kitchen table, head in his hands, whispering, "I do not know how to make her smile anymore." I had never heard that. Never seen it. Never imagined it. The flower brightened faintly, as if relieved to finally be seen. I touched another. I saw myself turned away from him in bed, my back stiff, shoulders trembling with silent tears. Samuel reached toward me, stopped, pulled his hand back with a sigh that I had mistaken for indifference. But here, in this garden of truth, I saw what it was: fear. Fear of making it worse. Fear of breaking me open when he felt too clumsy to hold what came out. The flower pulsed once in my hand before settling into a soft glow. I moved deeper into the garden. Each flower I passed revealed a moment from our marriage, sharp, tender, painful. Unspoken apologies, swallowed grief, small misunderstandings that grew roots. And beneath every scene, golden threads hung from above, connecting the memory to the floating wedding ring hovering somewhere beyond the haze. Then I reached the center of the garden. And everything changed. A warm, luminous wind circled around me, spinning the petals into a soft spiral that rose upward like a whispered prayer. The ground beneath my feet shimmered, turning from earth into a smooth light. Then I heard it. A sound small and soft, yet filled with a familiarity that made my breath hitch. The sound of a child's giggle. I turned. There, standing beneath a soft pillar of light, was a little figure. Small, gentle, glowing as though wrapped in warmth. My unborn child. Not an infant. Not old. But a presence shaped like innocence itself. The child held a small orb of light between tiny palms. The glow from it flickered in a rhythm that matched the faint beating inside my own chest. As I stepped closer, the garden bowed again, the flowers lowering their heads as though honoring this moment. My hands trembled. I felt no fear. Only a softness so deep it felt like my bones were melting. The child lifted their head and looked directly into my eyes. And in that gaze, I knew instantly, utterly, without explanation, who they were. I opened my mouth, but my voice cracked like dried leaves. You know me." The child nodded, stepping forward with gentle, obedient steps, like a lamb that had been waiting all its life for this meeting. When they reached me, they held up the glowing orb, and I felt the light touch my chest, warm and weightless. Inside the orb, shapes moved. Images. Truth. The things I had refused to face. The child's voice was soft, high, and clear as though echoing from both near and far. "You carried me longer in your heart than in your womb." Tears slid down my face instantly. I felt something break open inside me, the wall I had built, the sorrow I had packed away. The orb brightened. The child spoke again. Your sorrow shaped your silence. The truth struck like a warm, painful revelation. I saw every moment I had turned away. Every time I mistook his fear for apathy. Every year I let grief speak louder than love. The orb pulsed stronger, almost like a heartbeat. The child stepped closer, resting their small hand against mine. A warmth spread up my arm, into my chest, into every part of me that had been frozen for decades. Their final message came like a whisper made of sunlight. Go back and choose love without fear. The orb dissolved into me, flooding my spirit with a soft, glowing breath. I felt it settle into the hollow spaces of my heart, filling places I did not know were empty. Then the garden shifted again. Around me, the vows I spoke on my wedding day drifted through the air like delicate, floating paper. Each vow illuminated as it passed. To love. To cherish. In sorrow. In silence. In the secrets we never dared share. I reached out and touched one paper vow. It dissolved into light on my fingers. The golden marriage threads above me brightened so intensely they vibrated, humming like a soft chorus. The entire realm responded, the garden, the petals, the breeze. Something powerful was building. The child stepped back into the pillar of light, watching me not with sadness, but with certainty. Then the glow sharpened, condensing, pulling, rising. Every memory, every truth, every wound became a single brilliant point of light. I felt the air tighten. I felt the world lean in. The final truth was forming. The truth that tied my marriage, my grief, and my entire life together. It circled me like a soft storm. And just as it was about to reveal itself, the realm pulled away in a sudden, blinding sweep of light. The light that had held me so gently suddenly snapped tight, pulling me backward as though the entire realm inhaled sharply. The garden blurred, the child's small figure dissolved into brilliance, and the golden threads stretched into streaks of white. My name echoed once, soft, fading, and then everything collapsed into darkness. A painful weight slammed into my chest. Cold air burst into me like a flood. My body jolted upward, as if thrown back into itself. A scream tore itself from my throat, though no sound came out. My back arched. My eyes flew open. Blinding hospital lights hovered above me, sharp and sterile. I gasped hard, choking on air, trying to decide if I was still alive or still dreaming. My lungs burned, as if they had forgotten how to breathe. My hands trembled uncontrollably, shaking like leaves caught in a storm. Voices burst around me. She is back. Pulse returning. Stay with us, Evelyn. Stay with us. I could not answer. I could only breathe fast, shallow, desperate breaths that felt like knives scraping inside my chest. Samuel's voice cut through the noise like a cracked bell. Evie, my God, you came back to me. He was beside the bed, face streaked with tears I had never seen in all our years together. His hands hovered helplessly above me, afraid to touch me, afraid to break whatever fragile miracle had brought me back. He looked older and broken and unbearably human. I tried to speak, but my lips only trembled. The world was spinning, nurses shifting, machines beeping, feet moving quickly. My heartbeat pounded in my ears, out of rhythm, too strong, too fast. Tears blurred my vision. Not from pain, but from memory. The hallway of moments. The withered flowers. The glowing ring. The child holding light. Their voice still echoed in me. Go back and choose love without fear. I blinked and Samuel came into focus. His hands shook as he touched my forehead, then pulled away, then touched again, unsure if he was allowed to hold me. His voice cracked open. I thought I lost you. I thought. His breath hitched. Evelyn, please, do not leave me. Not like this. Not without me telling you why. He stopped because his voice broke completely. There was so much he wanted to say. So much I had wanted to hear for decades. The words that had been locked in me for half a lifetime rose to the surface, pushing against my throat. My fingers twitched, reaching for him with a desperation I did not realize lived inside me. I whispered, voice thin and trembling. Sam. I saw. I saw everything. He froze. What did you see, baby? What did you? But I could not finish. My body was still too weak, my lungs still fighting the shock of breath. My chest pulsed painfully with every inhale, but the pain felt right. Like waking up from a long, cold winter. A nurse adjusted my oxygen mask, telling me to breathe slowly, gently, deeply. I obeyed. Each breath brought pieces of the afterlife back to me. Each breath brought clarity. The truth had not vanished with the light. It clung to me like fragrance. I looked at Samuel, really looked at him. Not the man shaped by my assumptions, but the man I had seen trembling in the hallway of memories. The man who cried at the windowsill. The man who reached for me in his sleep. The man who carried guilt in silence because he believed sorrow was his burden to hide. A slow realization crept into me like warm water filling an empty bowl. He had loved me the whole time. He had never stopped. And I had been too wounded to see it. My heartbeat steadied, soft and rhythmic, as if syncing with the truth. Samuel cupped his hand against mine. This time I did not pull away. I let his warmth sink into my skin. We stayed like that. Quiet, trembling, staring into the years we had both lost. Until finally I managed to whisper through the mask. I am sorry for the silence. I am sorry for leaving you alone in the grief. He shook his head fast, tears dropping onto the blanket. No, no, Evelyn. That was my fault. All of it was my fault. I should have talked to you. I should have held you. I should have. His voice cracked again. I was scared to hurt you, scared to make it worse. Scared to watch you break because I did not know how to put you back together. Something inside me softened, cracked, melted into light. The unborn child's message threaded itself into my heart again. Your sorrow shaped your silence. Your sorrow shaped his too. We were two wounded souls walking parallel roads, mistaking each other's pain for distance. I squeezed his hand weakly. We can fix it. Sam. He bowed his head, sobbing softly. Nurses stepped back, giving us space. In that moment, fragile, shaking, drenched in revelation, I understood the beginning of what I had to do. Face my wounds. Forgive myself. Forgive him. Speak truth at last. End the silence that had held us hostage for 48 years. The afterlife had not shown me punishment. It had shown me possibility. A chance to rebuild what had been broken by unspoken grief. A chance to choose love, not fear. The next breath I took felt deeper than any I had taken in decades. And, in that breath, I knew. I had returned for a reason. The night after they stabilized me, the hospital room fell into a heavy quiet, the kind where every breath feels loud enough to break. A dim light glowed above my bed, soft as a dying candle. The 4 dripped slow, each drop marking time I almost never returned to. Samuel sat in the chair beside me with his elbows on his knees, face buried in both hands. He was not sleeping. He was grieving, the kind of grief that twists a man into shapes you do not recognize. I had never seen him look so small. Sam. My voice was thin, a shadow of itself. He lifted his head, and when he did, something inside me twisted so hard I had to shut my eyes. His face carried 48 years of guilt, held together by trembling breath. His eyelashes were wet. His mouth quivered like he was holding back another storm. I thought I lost you, he whispered. I thought God took you before I fixed what I broke. Something hot and sharp pressed behind my ribs. Because for the first time, I understood. He was not crying because he failed me. He was crying because he had loved me silently, fiercely, and wrongly, and never had the courage to tell me what lived behind his silence. My chest tightened. Sam. I saw you, I breathed, tears filling my eyes. I saw you crying in that hospital room years ago. I saw you reach for me when I turned away. I saw you trying, and I never knew. His whole body seemed to fold inward. I should have told you, he said. I should have told you how scared I was. You looked so broken. And I thought if I touched the wound, it would swallow us both. I felt those words enter me like a blade dipped in warmth. He had not abandoned me. He had been terrified of making me shatter. My tears spilled over. I blamed you, I whispered, the confession tearing out of me. I blamed you for the silence, for the pain, for not holding me long enough that night. And I carried it for decades, Sam. Decades. He reached for my hand slowly, like approaching a wounded animal he loved but feared might bite. I know, he said softly. I felt it, every day. The weight of those years settled over us like heavy snowfall, quiet, soft, suffocating. I pressed my other hand to my eyes, sobbing quietly. Not because of the pain, but because of the truth. I had spent half my life punishing a man who never stopped loving me. The memory of the garden returned. The wilted flowers, each representing a moment I had turned my face away. The vows floating like fragile paper. The child holding light. The child who had whispered, "Go back and choose love without fear." My breath trembled as I looked at Samuel. "I came back for us," I said. "For the truth we never spoke. For the love we buried. For the child we grieved alone." This time the tears fell from him without restraint. He laid his forehead against my hand and cried the way a grown man cries when he has carried too much for too long, deep, shaking, hurting. And I cried with him. We cried for the life we lost. We cried for the life we still had. We cried for the years we wasted hating each other when we were both just drowning silently. When the sobbing faded into soft breaths, he lifted his head and whispered, "Let us start again, Evelyn. Even if it is late. Even if it hurts." Pain ran through my chest, but it was a pain that felt like healing tearing through scar tissue. "Late love," I said softly, "is still love." The room went silent again. But this time it was not the suffocating silence we lived in. It was a silence full of breath, full of promise, full of God. A nurse entered to check the machines, but even she paused for a moment, sensing the softness that had settled over us. She adjusted nothing. She simply whispered, "God gave you another chance." After she left, I stared at the ceiling. The light flickered. My breath slowed. The child's messages replayed in my spirit like they were written across the air. You carried me longer in your heart. Your sorrow shaped your silence. Choose love without fear. Every word burned its way into my bones. For the first time in decades, I felt something inside me melt, a frost I mistook for strength. The weight of bitterness slid off my shoulders. My heart felt bare, tender, alive. I squeezed Samuel's hand. "Let us talk," I whispered. "Let us tell the truth from now on, even when it hurts." He nodded, tears catching in the corners of his eyes. "I will not hide from you anymore," he said. "And I will not let you hide from me." A soft exhale left me, almost a prayer. "I want us to heal, before God calls us for the last time." He lifted my hand and kissed it for the first time in years. "We will," he whispered. "We will." The room warmed. My heart steadied. The marriage threads I had seen above me, thin, fragile, glowing, seemed to hum inside my chest. I knew the truth then. Healing does not erase loss. It redeems it. I closed my eyes, letting peace settle over me like a soft blanket. And before sleep pulled me down, before the machines beeped their rhythmic song to mark a new beginning, I felt the child's presence once more. Not a vision, but an impression. A warmth over my heart, gentle and approving. I smiled through tears. "I am choosing love," I whispered. "If you are carrying silent pain in your marriage, do not let it harden into years you cannot get back. Truth spoken late is still truth. Love given late is still love. Do not wait for death to show you what you should have said in life. And if this story touched something buried inside you, stay with me. There are more truths we must face together, more hearts that need healing, more souls that need light. So before you go, share the video with someone who is silently hurting. Leave a comment so others know they are not alone. And subscribe with your notifications on, so you do not miss the next moment God reaches for you through these stories. We are healing together, one truth at a time.